G'day, Shocks. I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. Here today, reviewing the hand that had the whole poker world talking just recently from the $300,000 buy-in Super High Roller Bowl. This is one of the biggest buy-in tournaments of the year, maybe the biggest buy-in tournament this year. I actually played it. I did not win. I busted in the middle of the field. But I outlasted Daniel Negreanu, who busted early in the first level. You all know Daniel Negreanu, absolute world-class player. He is always working hard on his game. He's battling in the biggest games against the best players in the world. And he's a crusher. Number 3 on the all-time money list. 6 World Series of Poker bracelets. Absolute crusher. His opponent in this hand is Michael Addamo. I've actually reviewed quite a few of his hands here on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/pokercoaching. Make sure you check it out. If you are unfamiliar with him, he has 2 World Series of Poker bracelets, $13 million in live tournament earnings. He is the all-time money leader from Australia, and he gets in there and battles hard. I played a decent amount with him over the course of the Poker Masters and the Super High Roller Bowl series that took place at the PokerGO studio at Aria, and he will put you in nasty spots. He's actually been crushing it recently. It's funny. He and Mikita Badzikowski, I don't know how to say his name. Sorry, Mikita. They both came out for the $50,000 tournament, then there was the $100,000 tournament, and then the $300K, right? Mikita won one of them. Addamo won the other one. And then, well, spoiler alert, Michael Addamo ended up winning the Super High Roller Bowl as well. He is on an absolute heater. Actually, he won a 50K as well. He won a 50K and a 100K, and then the 300K. Oh my God. It's a pretty good run. All right, let's take a look at this hand featuring these 2 world-class players. Here we have Daniel Negreanu on the button with Ace-King. We are playing 250 big blinds deep. We started with 300,000 chips, so Negreanu lost 50,000 chips somewhere along the way. He opens it up with the Ace-King, and Addamo defends the 8-6 suited. So far, so good. Perfectly fine in standard. 8-6 offsuit's a hand that you can't really fold. If this was like 8-3 offsuit or 8-4 offsuit even, maybe you can fold, but 8-6 is just too good to fold to a 2.5 big blind raise when there's also a big blind ante in play. Flop comes giving Addamo the nuts. Addamo checks, and now Negreanu checks it back. You may ask, why not lead here? Whenever you're really deep stacked, in general, you do not want much of a leading range, just because whenever you do run into the nuts, you don't want to lose tons of chips. Now, obviously, Addamo has the nuts, but what about when he doesn't have the nuts, right? It is worth noting that Negreanu is going to have some nut hands on this 9-7-5 board, or at least effective nut hands. Like, he's raising 8-6 suited on the button and whatnot, probably. And he could obviously have sets. He could have the 2 pairs. So this is a spot where, yes, Adamo's range connects very well with this board, but because Negreanu opened from the button, he's going to connect pretty well with this, well enough with this board. Let's actually take a look at the GTO strategy for Negreanu. Is that pulled up? Good. In this scenario, you may be surprised to see that he should be checking a lot of the time. And that's because he just does not have much of a range advantage, and he does not have much of a nut advantage. Whenever it's basically 50-50, you don't do a whole lot of betting. Let's see what Negreanu is betting on this 9-7-5 board. Notice he's betting most of his 9s, right? They're all, well, some of his 9s, not even most, some of his 9s. You're going to find that whenever you are doing a whole lot of checking, you're going to be using a mixed strategy with the majority of your range. And you see the 9s prefer to bet, especially Ace-9 and King-9, although you do see some of the 9s checking in this vicinity. You'll always notice that hands with a top pair and a straight draw very often bet. So you'll see hands like 9-8 betting pretty frequently, 9-6 betting pretty frequently, right? Some middle pairs are betting, right? Over pairs are betting, although interestingly enough, aces and kings do a decent amount of checking. You'll find that GTO strategy often checks back with aces in scenarios like this because they can just easily get to the showdown, right? And they're unlikely to be outdrawn, whereas a hand like 10s is way more likely to get outdrawn, right? Because if your opponent has random king-jack and they get a king, you lose. So you'll see hands like 10s betting very close to every time, whereas aces does some checking. Essentially what this does is whenever you bet, you have some good strong overpairs, you have some good strong top pairs, yeah. But also when you check, you have those hands as well, and it puts your opponent in a difficult scenario. Take a look at the bluffs that are mostly used. We see the 8s are very preferred as bluffs, Jack-10 very preferred as bluffs. These are essentially draws that can bet and then call a raise. We'll see some 6 betting as well, right, for a gut shot as well. Obviously, the good hands are betting 9-7, 7-5, 7-5. These are all betting. Underpairs are not betting very frequently. And then a lot of the unpaired high cards are not doing a whole lot of betting. A lot of the ace highs are just checking it back, which is what Negreanu did, right? You see ace king in the scenario checks 75% of the time, give or take. Perfectly fine, standard, and good. And it is always tough whenever it does go check, and you don't improve with a hand like ace king, but quite often you just get out of the way. Like, say it comes any card besides an ace or a king, and Addamo bets, you're probably just going to get out of the way. Now, I will say, from playing with Addamo and from watching a lot of footage of Addamo on various high roller tournaments, if you are a PokerGo subscriber, they had a $250,000 buy-in tournament recently where they had Addamo on the feature table a decent amount, and like I watched all that clearly, and he gets after it. He is not afraid to run big bluffs. So this is a spot where when you do check it back with the ace king, perhaps you want to be a little bit more call happy against someone like Addamo than you do against someone who's just more straightforward. But you got to be aware of that. Also, I'm going to say that it is tough to play against people who will really turn up the heat. And Addamo is capable of turning up the heat. I've seen him run multiple gigantic bluffs. And he also is pretty balanced and has some nut hands in those scenarios as well. And it's tough against those players. And the fact that those players do run big check raises makes you have to be a little bit more cautious. Because think about it. What hands really want to get it all in on 9-7-5 if you know your opponent's going to have some nuts and some bluffs? And the answer is just not a lot, right? So anyway, Negreanu checks. He gets a really good turn, the ace. And this is a spot where I have to imagine Addamo's not going to bet all that often. If you think about Negreanu's checking range on the flop, what does it contain a whole lot of? Well, it has a whole lot of aces, right? Notice, look at all these aces are checking, right? So given he has all these aces, this is a spot where I have to presume Addamo's going to check a ton. And whenever he is checking a ton, he's going to be betting very polarized with just his best made hands and some probably high equity draws and a few low equity draws. Here is Addamo's turn strategy, as you see, checking 89% of the time. It's almost every time. And look at what he is betting. He's betting 9-5 for 2 pair, pocket 5s for a set, pocket 7s for a set, jack 8 for a double gut shot, 10-8 for an open-ended, 9-7 for 2 pair, ace-9 for top pair, for top 2 pair, ace-7 for top and middle pair, right? He's betting really good hands and then some bluffs. Notice we have some bluffs down here, which are pretty fun. A lot of people don't find these bluffs down here with 4-3, 4-2, and 3-2. But these are often very good bluffing hands because you can easily bet these and fold if you get raised, right? It's quite a strong play to have really good hands in your value betting range, high equity draws like 10-8, jack 8, jack 10, and then a few kind of junky bluffs. Like if you bet the 3-2 suited here and you get raised, you just fold, right? You move on with your life. If you bet the other draws, you do not fold if you get raised. So this is a spot where we'd see the 8-6 actually not betting all that often. And you're going to find that quite often the super nuts does a decent amount of checking, especially when it's not very likely to get outdrawn. And let's see if Addamo does it. Are we sticking to the script? Yes, so far so good. Both players playing good, solid GTO poker. I have to presume Negreanu's going to bet this hand basically every time. This is a spot where ace-king is good a lot. Now, obviously, we see that Addamo is checking with the 8-6 sometimes, but if you go back to the rest of the checking range, given he's betting ace-9, ace-7, ace-5, 9-7, 9-5, right? He's betting all the 2 pairs. When Addamo checks, he's going to have mostly worse hands, right? I mean, look, he has these aces, which we crush. He has these king highs, which we crush. He has a lot of 9s, which we crush. Essentially, we crush everything besides the few slow played hands and, the exact 8-6. We do see ace-king betting less than I would have thought. I'm kind of surprised we don't see ace-king betting every time here, but it does check about half the time. Okay? Probably because it's a hand that it's not so concerned with getting outdrawn, right? Whereas we see ace-jack and ace-10 betting a little bit more often. Interesting to see. This may have to do with blockers to various straights, straight draws, etc. Like ace-8 betting frequently with the gut shot, ace-6 betting pretty frequently. So this all makes a lot of sense. What else is betting? King 9, very likely best, right? You got to realize that if when Addamo checks, he's just going to have a lot of weakish hands here. So King 9 is good enough to go for value at this point. And then whatever other bluffs we have. So we're going to find various 8s, various 6s, I have to presume. So here we have various 8s going for the bet, right? Not many over here. Here we have all the sixes going for a bet that we have remaining in our range, right? All the unpaired sixes going for bluff. And then something you see happen in this scenario when you don't really have all that many logical bluffs because you would have bluffed with most of them earlier. Remember on the flop, right? Look at all these bluffs betting. There aren't actually all that many bluffs in Negreanu's range. So what you see happening from a GTO point of view in this scenario is usually the card that is above the second card on the board bets quite frequently as a bluff. And as we see here, that would be a 10 and a jack. 10s and jacks are right above the 9, right? These hands are used as bluffs very frequently. Just stone airball bluffs. This is something almost no one does, where they bet the jack 4 suited on the turn, right? But this is a good, strong GTO play. If this was like a jack high board, then the king high and the queen high would be the ones bluffing very frequently. Because you have to realize when you do get check called here, you're going to be against a whole lot of 9s and 7s and 5s, right? So you want to have an overcard to the 9, the 7, or the 5, ideally. Or a draw to the nuts, like with 4-3 down here. So this is a region of hands that you often do not see bluffed from most players. And because of that, you should usually overfold a little bit when you face lots and lots of aggression. That's usually not such a bad strategy because most people are not bluffing quite often enough. To be fair, a lot of people don't take a hand like Queen 6 and bluff it, even though that's like a no-brainer bluff, right? So anyway, let's see if Negreanu does go for the bet with the ace-king. It seems like it's a mixed strategy. I would have bet this literally every time, and I probably would have messed up because I would not have checked this ever. You have to realize, whenever I go through these hands, I'm learning a lot as well, right? I'm in here battling these games against these best players, and I always want to ask, like, would I have played the hand like this player did? And also, would I have played like the GTO strategy? And sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't, right? And you want to make sure that you are working hard and studying and improving. Speaking of improving, I have a poker training site, PokerCoaching.com. Head over there, check it out. Go to PokerCoaching.com/free and get a completely free trial. We have a lot of quizzes there. You want to take a quiz now? Sure, let's do it. Okay. In this scenario, if you are Michael Addamo with the 8-6 facing this turn bet, what would you do? You're obviously not folding, but would you continue slow playing and call? Would you raise small, like 8,000? Or would you raise big? And if you would raise big, how big do we go given we are super deep stacked? Take a second, think about it, pause the video, and write what you would do in the comments section below. All right, this is definitely a spot where we need to dial in that check raise. In this scenario, when Negreanu bets to turn, his range is going to be a whole lot of aces, right? And also a whole lot of draws, a reasonably strong polarized range. So against a reasonably strong polarized range, you want to be check raising with your effective nut hands, especially the nut hands that really want to build a big pot. And as we see here, the GTO strategy is actually to raise quite big, 200% pot. We are going for a big raise in this scenario. What exactly is 200% pot? We would call the 6,500, that'd make the pot 13.5, and then we would make it 2x that, so 27,000 we would go, plus our call, I think. 30,000-ish. 30,000-ish is a strong, solid GTO play in this spot. You may say, excuse me, 30,000-ish? Yeah. Whenever you're really deep stacked, you're going to find that you need to get money in the pot with the nuts. So whenever you're going to be using this gigantic check raise, your range is going to be super polarized to effective nuts and then some high equity bluffs and some low equity bluffs, right? So let's take a look. Is that what the solver does? We have 8-6 for the nuts, pocket 7s for the nuts, ace-9 for the nuts, ace-7 for the nuts. Notice here, though, we see ace-7 not even going for the big raise all that often, right? We see ace-8 every once in a while, ace-10 every once in a while. These hands are like barely good enough. And then we see some draws. So what are our high equity bluffs in the spot? That's going to be jack-8 for double gut shot, 10-8 for double gut shot, jack-10 for gut shot, right? Although jack-10 isn't raising all that often. Interesting to see jack-10 folding. I'm kind of surprised to see jack-10 just folding to Negreanu's turn bet. Seems kind of nitty. But whatever. 6-4, raising a lot for open-ended. And then some low equity bluffs with 4-3, 4-2, and 3-2. Pretty low equity bluffs here, right? Also, you will see sometimes like pairs that are likely not good that also have a draw going for a raise, like 6-5, 7-6, right? These are probably not good when Negreanu bets this ace turn. But you can call them, and call them certainly the default, but these are also hands that could conceivably go for a bluff raise, because if they raise gigantic and get called, they have 4 outs to the straight, which is almost certainly good. And then sometimes when they pair their, like let's say 6-5, 6-5 when it pairs its 5, it's probably good. And when 6-5 gets a 6, it's actually good some portion of the time, because maybe it gets a hand like ace-king, and, well, you win with 2 pair in that scenario. Okay. All this looks pretty standard-ish to me, right? Trying to think if there's anything here that's not standard. Notice middle pairs are actually folding here. I probably would not be folding quite this often. Like if you gave me Jack-7 here and it goes check on the flop, I check the turn and Negreanu makes a medium bet on the turn. Am I really folding Jack-7? I don't know. Let's look at Negreanu's bluffs. Notice here if Negreanu is bluffing a whole lot of these hands in this vicinity, you probably need to call more often. I guess I would presume people naturally overbluff with stuff like Queen-Jack, King-Jack, King-10 in the spot. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, right? And this is a spot where I have to ask myself, is this a scenario where people overbluff? Remember how I mentioned people do not necessarily overbluff with the Jack-4 suited, but I do think they're overbluffing with like King-10 here and Queen-Jack here. So maybe they're essentially taking these hands and slotting them over here. Who knows? But I would have had a difficult time folding out the 7s in this spot. Notice the 5s fold. Like 5s are just a bit of an easier fold. Some 8s when you have them are now folding. Like I'm kind of surprised to see King-8 folding, given the opponent's betting with like Queen-10 and Jack-10 and Queen-Jack, but it does. Okay, fine and good. Let's see if Addamo goes for the giant raise. He does! Blast it! He's been studying his GTO poker. Now, what do you do with Ace-King? Some people just become a chicken and they fold. You could be beat. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think, personally, if anything, Addamo is going to be over-bluffing in this scenario. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just perfectly balanced. If there is a human in the world who is going to find the bluffs in this spot, I can tell you it's going to be Addamo. He seems to really, really like finding spots where he knows he has a lot of nuts and his opponent does not. And he just blasts him. And to be fair, if there's ever a tournament to do that, it's going to be the $300,000 buy-in Super High Roller Bowl, because most people aren't trying to go broke early in the first level. I know this is hard to sort of wrap your head around in this scenario, because I see that Addamo has just the nuts here, right? I can guarantee he's probably going to find some bluffs, unless he thinks Negreanu is the biggest calling station in the world, which, you know, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Okay, what should Negreanu do? Notice, Ace-King actually folds about half the time. Cool spot, right? Ace-Queen folds half the time. And you may say, why in the world are we folding Ace-King? We bet the turn and we get check raised. Can't our opponent just check raise us to death? And the answer is actually no, because we do have a whole lot of hands that have very good equity, like 2 pairs, right? And sets, right? And high equity draws. Notice here, like 10-8's not folding. Some people think with a hand like 10-8 or Jack-8, well, we're not getting good pot odds, I guess we have to fold. But here we have gigantic implied odds. If we improve, Addamo is very likely to just continue betting. And we're going to have great implied odds in this scenario. So notice no re-raising. Whenever you're facing a giant check raise, that essentially presumes your good opponent is very, very polarized. If your good opponent is very, very polarized, you in turn have no raising. So you do entirely calling or folding. Notice that Ace-8 calls more often than Ace-Jack, let's say. And why is that? Well, if you think about it, look at what Addamo's raising, right? He's raising essentially 2 pair better. Like Ace-Jack beats Ace-10, but that's it. Every other hand, Ace-8 and Ace-Jack are essentially the same. And notice Ace-10 is only a small portion of his range. But Ace-8 has a gut shot. Having that gut shot's nice, because sometimes you get the 6 and you get bailed out. So anyway, Ace-King is a spot where call sometimes, fold sometimes. I can tell you I just would have paid. I would have called. Fine. We get here. And now, Addamo gets what I think is pretty clearly one of the worst cards in the deck. So what does he do? He 3x pots all in. You may say, is a 5 one of the worst cards in the deck? I think it is, because while he may have some hands like 6-5 in his range that we saw the solver use as bluffs every once in a while, Negreanu has a lot of 2 pair here that improve to sets. Oh, not sets, full houses. And full houses are never folding. Let's take a look at what the GTO strategy is here, because I actually have no clue what it even shows. All right, Addamo's strategy on the river is to go all in 0% of the time. Notice we gave the solver lots of options here. Bet 200% pot, 0% of the time. 125% pot, 0% of the time. Pot, 0% of the time. GTO solver here likes either 60% or 25%. Small bet or small bet. And again, why is that? Because if you look at Addamo's range that gets to this point, he has literally no nuts. Basically none. Look, he has no ace-5 in his range as played. He has no 7-5 as played. He has no 9-5 as played, right? So he has no nuts. Does Negreanu have any of these hands in his range? Well, he has a little bit of pocket 5s, a little bit of pocket 7s, a little bit of pocket 9s, a little bit of ace-5. Oh, actually, a lot of ace-5. A lot of ace-5. So, when that's the case, when your opponent has just some really, really super nut hands in their range that actually crush your previously strong range, you in turn don't get to use giant bets. You instead are supposed to use small and medium bets. Because look, 8-6 is almost certainly still the best hand. It's trying to bet, right? It's trying to get money in the pot. But this is a scenario where when you bet with 8-6, sometimes you're beat. So you're no longer essentially perfectly polarized, right? Notice Addamo's turn strategy. He was very close to perfectly polarized because like ace-9 is effectively the nuts. Pocket 7s is effectively the nuts, right? It's like really, really, really good. 8-6 is the nuts, and Negreanu doesn't have this whole pile of 8-6 offsuits, right? But that's no longer the case on the river because these hands are no longer the nuts. So from a GTO point of view, you should use small bets. But Addamo goes 3x pot all in. Either he messed up, or the ranges he would have gotten to at this point were not the same that the solver used for whatever reason. Maybe Addamo knows he has a lot of 7-5 and 9-5 in this scenario that I'm not presuming. Or maybe he thinks Negreanu's a calling station. If there's one player in the field who may be a little bit of a calling station on the river in a spot where they may think you're trying to push them around, it may be Daniel Negreanu. I know a lot of the players don't have 300K to their name to get in there and battle with and lose on the first level. But if there is some player who has a whole lot of money, presumably, it's Negreanu, right? And maybe he's the type of player who will just say, not today, kid, and find a call. Because I'm sure Negreanu's watched the same footage I have, and he's seen Addamo blast it off over and over and over again. And look, I would not fault him for a call here. I know that may sound insane to say that I would call it off for 3x pot, but like, look, it's an unfortunate spot. I realize the solver had no all-in range for Addamo, but you can force it to have an all-in strategy. And here's what Negreanu should do in this scenario. Notice here's his range, right? He has pocket aces for the super nuts and ace-5 for the super nuts. Obviously, ace-5 loses to pocket 7s, which Addamo has, but whatever. So we see 7-5 calling, 7s, 9s, 5s, obviously ace-5 calling. And let's take a look at the ace-king. What does ace-king do against the all-in? It actually folds the vast majority of the time. 92% of the time it finds a fold. But again, if you think Addamo is drastically over bluffing, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, then I just can't fault the call. Like if you give Addamo all-ins with stuff like 9-6 here and 10-8 and Jack-8, I mean, it's just a call. It sucks, but it's just a call. Negreanu calls. He loses. Addamo wins all the chips. After this hand, a lot of people were berating Negreanu on Twitter. How could you possibly call off with just one pair in this scenario? And Negreanu's probably sitting here thinking, I know he bluffs here sometimes. And then, funny enough, about an hour later on the stream, Michael Addamo plays some gigantic pot against Jake Schindler on the river where he had a marginal made hand. He checked the river. Jake goes for thin value. Addamo check rips it all in for like 5 or 6 times pot as a bluff. And he got the fold. Vindicated for Daniel Negreanu. So yeah, congrats to Addamo. He got in there, he battled, he flew all the way to America, got to play with the Americans, won 3 tournaments. Poker's nice and easy when you come to America, I guess. Congrats to him. That's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed this hand, do me a quick favor. Click.
Got it. That's it. Good hand. All right. On to the next one.
If you enjoyed this hand, do me a quick favor. Click the like and subscribe button below. I know this video was a little bit long. It's a little bit in depth, but, you know, this was a good one. This is a spot where a lot of people do not find the bluffs adequately. By the way, if your opponent does not bluff on the river here, obviously just fold. In a lot of games, your opponents just will not be bluffing here. They're going to show you the nuts, whatever the nuts is. They may be, you know, overvaluing a hand like ace-9 or maybe even 8-6 a little bit, but they're going to show you the effective nuts. And if they're going to show you a range that is very tilted towards value and very not tilted towards bluffs, you should just be folding way more often than normal. But again, like I said, if there's ever a player you want to find a big call against, it's probably someone like Addamo. It's tough when they put you in these spots, right? It makes you play for all the money. It's a lot of fun to play poker when you know that your 300 big blind stack or 250 big blind stack may just be all in. All right, that's it for today. Good luck in the games. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. How do you like free stuff? Yeah? Well, good, because I have a free membership to my site, pokercoaching.com, for you. Click. Get out of the way, hat. Click right up there to get it. And while you're at it, go ahead and click the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.